Hello, everybody. I want to give you a short class on what we call the LCD, or lowest common denominator. This is a series I'll be doing. I don't know how much time will be in between each of these teachings, but one of the questions I get continually on our site, because we have that more grounded and realistic approach to spiritual development, is how do I measure? How do I actually measure my real development? How do I know that I'm developing and progressing the way I should be? Because there are a lot of, and we'll talk about this in a few minutes, there are a lot of systems and teachers out there that say don't measure, there's nothing to measure, they don't have a system, they have no clear signs internally, externally to measure progress, so therefore it's all like kind of waffly and new agey God realmy, like I'm so spiritual, right? But how do we really know? And so in our school, in Trikma Hasidic Yoga, we call this the LCD, or lowest common denominator. Just like in mathematics. Not that I can remember how to do fractions, but anyway. So what is the lowest common denominator? Let me give you a description. I came up with this way of describing what my teachers were talking about as stable realization when I noticed that emotional, exciting events would come up, either positive or negative. And I would say to a person, where are you right now? My student, where are you right now? Oh my God, I totally lost awareness of the view. I totally lost my connection to my awareness and my awareness of my essence state, right? So anytime we fall out of awareness of our essence state, we're not where we want to be. It's okay to be mindful of things you're doing, right? To keep you from making big mistakes. That's like the Hinayana Theravada Buddhist approach, I'm walking, I'm eating, mindful, so that you don't make mistakes. But from a tantric standpoint, from a Mahasiddha yoga standpoint, including Taoism, Dzogchen, Tantra, non-dual Tantra, it's not enough just to be mindful of what we're doing. That's a great beginning. Everybody has to have that, period. But eventually we have to be in a state of awareness that's connected to our essence, our base, right? So when we fall out of that, we're not really cultivating at that moment. So we have to be in that while we're practicing, seated, and we have to be in that awareness of our essence or base during the day while we're going through integration. And that's how we progress. How do we measure that progress, though? We measure it by, again, lowest common denominator. What is that? Example. I was on a train platform in India, kind of horrific example, but it really is good for this. It's on a train platform, had about 30 students with me traveling through India. We were going to hang out with my teacher, which we did, and do practice with him all together as a group, which was awesome. Sitting really close to him, the masses were sitting way out there, and we were sitting right with him, which was awesome. And we were going to the Mahakumbha Mela and stuff like that to get blessings. And what happened was the train was pulling in, and everybody was jumping on it. It was kind of a remote town, and people needed to get home. It was like dinner time, so a lot of people getting home from work and stuff. As usual in India, in these kind of places, the train was overpacked, just completely overpacked. People were hanging literally on people on the side of the train as the train was pulling out. And I'm standing there on the platform looking at that going, ooh, man, that doesn't look safe, One guy comes running. He's in a suit and a tie, middle-class guy, kind of not the greatest suit and tie. And he's got his little briefcase, obviously doing business, and he wants to get home to his family. Running, he grabs the train handle, and he's trying to grab on. He has a briefcase in the other hand, and people trying to pull him, but he's not making it, and he slips. And tragically, he falls between the train and the platform. And without getting too graphic, he was stretched longer than a person should be. But he was alive because it was mostly musculoskeletal damage with a little bit of internal bleeding. Now, at that moment, because of my training, I was unfazed and jumped into action, basically, to try to help this person. Jumped down from the tracks. But I noticed around me that complete, deer in the headlights kind of situation of people who don't have an integrated awareness in their everyday life. Even all my students were in shock. So some were, and this is how the range goes, right? Some are cursing, some are crying, some are just catatonic. Only one student jumped down with me, and I snapped, he was kind of out of it too, and I snapped him out of it. Hey, come on, let's go. He's like, right. And he jumped down on the tracks, and we got to work trying to save this guy. Of course, we couldn't save him. And that led into giving him death teachings while he was dying in the so-called clinic they had there. But anyway, another story. Everyone there can check their LCD, lowest common denominator, by that. So surprise is one of the greatest ways to check your lowest common denominator. Even humorously, they used to have on the Pink Panther movies, Kato, the actor who played Kato, would be in the refrigerator or hiding out when Inspector Clouseau would come home, and he would jump out to try to surprise him. This is great for checking your lowest common denominator if you don't die of a heart attack in the meantime. My first wife and I used to practice this until she found it was just too scary because she wasn't ever able to get over the surprise and fear of me jumping out and surprising her, So we ended that one because she thought she'd have a heart attack. So these kind of situations are great to check it. Another time I was in a car driving back from teaching in Montreal, Canada, with two students, and we were going along at a good clip in a brand new car. He kind of wanted to show me his car, his capabilities, but it was snowing, very slick on the highway, and I was thinking, like, this isn't the greatest. I was in the front seat and passenger side, and his wife was in the back seat all buckled up. Well, sure enough, the car, he doesn't pay attention, and he goes off the side of the road into the shoulder, and the car starts sliding sideways because it goes into a big dip on the other there, and trees are all lining, and I'm thinking, wow, we're going about 80 miles an hour. And the car starts sliding sideways, and it's halfway like this, and it's sliding at 60, well, actually, it was going 80, so it started slowing down kind of slowly because it was so slick out. And we were taking down trees, sapling trees, pop, pop, pop. I remember hearing the sound, pop, 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 pop. And as soon as it started happening, I started talking to him in a very calm voice. It's okay, relax, slowly pump the brake, don't push hard, don't lock it up, really just talking to him, downshift very slowly. And his wife in the back was going crazy. I remember going, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, in a nonstop fashion, like for 2 minutes solid. It was quite surreal. Anyway, I was able to talk him through the whole thing, and we went through a little horrific moment, and it shot across the road to the other side of the highway into the shoulder. Thank goodness there were no trucks coming from the other direction, but we got to a safe stop in the shoulder. Anyway, this again illustrates the type of awareness we need. Now, military people, warriors, these kind of people, people really trained in mindfulness, they have this kind of awareness, and we have to have that. So we want to keep that connected. But the point here is that we want to have some assessment. How can we assess this state of the lowest common denominator? And this is one of the ways. Look how you do in surprise. Maybe I'm a mean teacher. Maybe I'm a really nice teacher who really cares about the students. But sometimes I would put students into these surprise situations so they could check themselves. And if they're understanding the game and they really want to grow, they're really grateful for that kind of thing, right? If not, they feel like probably persecuted, not a big meanie, but whatever. So surprise is a great way to test your lowest common denominator. Another great way is sleep and dream. Are you able to know you're dreaming when you're dreaming? Are you able to wake yourself up from that dream? Are you able to put yourself back to sleep again in a natural state of awareness? These kind of things. This really shows your lowest common denominator as well. Many, many people tell me about how high they are and these great spiritual experiences they're having. I say, do you remember your dreams from last night? And they don't remember the dream. That's like 101, dream 101. And if you can't be conscious in waking, sleeping, and dreaming, forget about entering into the fourth state or your real essence, right? So there's levels and levels of dream yoga. Now we're going to be doing dream, sleep, and death yoga coming up this winter, right? And that's up on an advertisement, I think, now on the Facebook group site, so you can see that right now. Anyway, that's another great way to test it. Sleep yoga, even more advanced. Then we finally get to death. Death is the real test, the final test. When someone gets news that they're dying, if you have fortunately enough time to go until you die, you might get news that you're dying from some disease. Maybe it takes 3 months or 3 years. Lots of time to prepare, really time to get into it. But sometimes maybe you don't have that kind of time. You don't get that time. You could be bleeding out. You've got 30 seconds, femoral artery. You've got 2 minutes and you're dead. Just freak accident at home. Drop the kitchen knife, cuts your femoral artery in your leg. I didn't know I could die from that. Yeah, you'll die. You'll bleed out in 2 minutes or less. So you're dying. You can't stop it. Nobody's around to help you. Okay. Are you ready? What is your lowest common denominator? If you lose it at that point, your after-death process will be horrific. Your rebirth will be horrific. it'll be just a shit show, basically. So we really have to have our self together and check regularly and be tested. Death will be the final exam, right? But on the other hand, if you have integrated awareness really well and you've been working progressively, moving through and testing your state of consciousness as you go through, which we'll get to at the end, then you're going to be okay in the death situation, right? So you need all these ways. So what is the lowest common denominator? In a nutshell, it's the basic attainment level. What is the level of my basic attainment? That is lowest common denominator. We will always fall back to that under hyper stress. So when we are, in a stressful situation, you will know where your practice actually is. So when, we have to watch out for this, for the lovey-lighty God realm kind of situation, right? It's very popular now to be like, I am Shiva, I am Shiva. Or if you're a Taoist, I am the Tao, I am Wu Wei, or I'm nothing. Vedantist, I'm nothing, there's no me, there's no I. And to walk around like you're really in that kind of state. But it's so rare that a person actually has that state integrated with their body, their speech, as well as their energy. Speech means this, and their emotion, and their mind. It brings me back to a time in the 80s when I was teaching in Hawaii. And, we were in a very big satsang on Maui, and it was going really well, and everybody was in a very light mood. So some of the people in the audience were saying that one of their friends there is a real God realmer, a new agey God realmer. And what does that mean? That means a vision of lovey-lightiness, that everything is love, everything is Shiva, everything is God, everything is whatever. There's no bad in the universe, and thinking these thoughts all the time and generating that lovely bhava or attitude or feeling. But it's not grounded, it's missing something. Because it's not real non-duality where everything is love and light. It's a lopsided polar version where only the good stuff is love and light and the bad stuff is not. I don't want to get near that. That's negative, man. What do you mean you got cancer? How'd you do that to yourself? It's so negative, man. Don't bring that energy around, that kind of thing. Or judging people about it, or, whatever. This God realm thing. So there was a guy there, and a lot of his friends were cueing me to kind of show him, help him see that his level wasn't there. So we were playing around, and I said, do you want to do an experiment? Because verbally we couldn't get there. Everything I said, he goes, but the words you're saying are just essence, and I'm just in essence, so it's all oneness to me, Meantime, what these people were bummed out about was that he was going around mooching from everybody, taking money, taking food, taking shelter, using their car, not paying for gas. Didn't have a job. He thought the world owed him a living because he was a godly being, right? So anyway, he's sitting there. He says, yeah, I'll play. So he comes up closer. And I said, I'm going to put you in a wrist lock. I want to see if you can hold this experience of oneness. After all, it's just me, you, and the wrist lock. I grabbed his wrist, put him in a wrist lock, and just gave him enough pain. Because pain, God realm people don't like pain, right? And he was like, this is very funny. He's like, very funny. Yeah, oh yeah, I'm all one with this. I'm all with that. Put on more. He's like, I'm not one, I'm not one. So he started saying, I'm not one, I'm not one. And it was just a fun little experiment. I didn't hurt him, and we were friends after, of course. But this illustrates a very important point. The integration of the experience of oneness can't just be conceptual. It has to be physical, it has to be emotional, and it has to be mental. And if you study with us in the school, you're going to hear this from the womb to the tomb. Because I think one of the greatest disservices happening in spiritual work right now is that the world is being proliferated with so-called teachers who didn't do the training, really, and who run around espousing the idea that you can just think your way into enlightenment. Oh, they might talk about practices and stuff, but it's never really strong. It's never really hard. They don't take self-reflection well. They don't even criticize themselves well. They can't see themselves. It's very much a God realm, human realm thing. And there's, dozens and dozens of these kind of teachers running around right now. The sad part is their students don't know their lowest common denominator. Their students are thinking, as the teacher is thinking, that they have a very high lowest common denominator. That is delusion 101, right? We're not going to get into that. We don't, in this school, forget it. It's about reality. It's about New York, City Street, integrated. Yeah, maybe we have more discomfort. We experience more discomfort than the other paths, but they're not even growing. So why do I want to have some spaced out experience of myself as all lovey-lighty in a bubble, pink bubble floating around, and with all my friends reifying the same thing for me because we're all in the same bubble, And then boom, the S hits the fan and everybody's running crazy like a ninny, sky falling in, right? So we want that realistic base. We want that reality base. Now, we have to come through the 3 doors, body, speech, and mind. And this is where stable attainment has to come. Sometimes the body might be a bit ahead, the energy, speech might be ahead, or the mind might be ahead, But overall, all 3, if you look like a bar graph, they should be relatively all 3 moving up in some kind of harmony, right? So there's a popular way, let me pick on the Shaivists for now. I am Shiva, I am Shiva. There was a book written by a fellow from Melbourne, I think, and it was something like the Yogas of Kashmir Shaivism or something. And in it, he would have the practice for Shambhavopaya, which is like to constantly just relax into this experience, a G thought, I am Shiva, I am Shiva. Well, there's a lot of problems with this idea. And I know Abhinavagupta comes out in Tantrasara talking about how the main fault of why people aren't realized is they just don't have proper understanding of who they are. Absolutely true. I totally agree with everything he says. But they tend to not pay attention to the other things he says in that text and in Tantra Loka, which Tantrasara is the essence of, about how we have to do a lot of spiritual work to support that experience if we haven't had the highest degree of Shaktipata, or awakening power. Now, the type of awakening power for my God realm, human realm friends out there who might be susceptible to this kind of thing that Abhinavagupta is talking about is a Shaktipata or awakening on the level of stage level 8 or 9. So there's 9 Shaktipatas described, right? 8 or 9. 8 or 9 level Shaktipata is so high that there's simply nothing you need to do for practice anymore. You simply abide in the state of Shiva, Parashakti, consciousness, energy, and everything just happens. And actually, usually you die fairly shortly after because there's no reason to stick around, right? You rainbow body or fall over dead. So right away, we have to understand, when the Abhinavagupta talks about that highest type of realization, that highest type of practice, he's not talking about us. We have to be like incredible narcissists to think that he's talking about us. And I'm going to apply what's called the Shambhavopaya method of practice. You got to be kidding me. So there's teachers running around teaching people just to hold this consciousness. You're Shiva, you're one with everything, you're one with everything. And I think it's really bad instruction. And always, to me, it's because I know some of those teachers and they haven't done the real training. They haven't done the foundational training. They like to allude to it and build a CV or a resume as if saying that they've done really strong foundational training. But the truth is they haven't. They're kind of self-trained and very little at that. So, and this is a lot of people I'm talking about. I know a fair bit. I'd say definitely over 24 out there doing this. And I go, wow, I'm old enough now to know the history of a lot of people out there who are teaching. And this does a disservice to the student, a tremendous disservice to the student, because you can't hold this place of I am Shiva, or I am all one, I am all one. There's no container to hold that experience. And therefore, when the energy of a strong emotion comes, when the energy of a strong situation comes, we get slammed and we pretty much fall apart. And in that moment, actually, we can have more reconditioning in a negative way that sets us back spiritually than if we weren't in that God realm, human realm place of thinking that I'm growing spiritually, right? So here's the interesting thing. Just think about this, especially from my Kashmir Shaivist friends right now, because I'm picking on them. And I'm one of you. Abhinavagupta himself had like 3 gurus, and he talks about training really hard with each one of these gurus. So he's not putting himself in the category of, oh, I had this stage 8 on Shaktipat. Oh, I went directly into Shambhavopaya practice, Anupaya practice. He didn't do that for himself. So if you're doing that yourself, or if you're a teacher out there doing that in the world today, you're immediately putting yourself above the level of Abhinavagupta. And good for you. Maybe you are. I have no way to know. I don't care, actually. But I'm kind of a person who plays the odds, the numbers. And what I see people doing. If you have a Facebook group, you probably weren't Abhinavagupta, his capacity. If you are writing a lot of books that have a lot about your personal story in it, it's probably not Abhinavagupta-like. If you're running around doing workshops or worried about how to pay your rent, probably not Abhinavagupta. You know what I mean? I'm trying to get out here. If you're really worried about your self-image, probably not Abhinavagupta's aptitude. So we're talking about a person with very high aptitude, and yet he himself took gurus. He himself did the hard training. He himself talks about it. Tantra Loka 4.98, he talks about, in our terms, to paraphrase it, you got to work your body, speech, and mind. All three have to be together in a supportive practice to gain the fruit of the mental realization of who you really are, Shiva. Now, Wu Wei Taoists, my friends in China, my friends around the world who practice Wu Wei Taoism, easy to fall into the same trap. Everything is one, everything is the Tao, I don't have to do anything. My really dear friend, Lu Ming, who I used to live next to for many years and who I completed my Taoist training with for 2 years of apprenticeship with him, astrology, Zhou Yi, Tao Te Ching, non-conceptual meditation every morning. We were in each other's houses all day long, every day. That can be attested to by anybody who knew us at that time. I took formal initiation, everything, into the family lineage, whatever. I completed my system with him, my Taoist training with him, and he was a fantastic teacher of very high-level Taoism. Well, the guy practiced like crazy. I mean, he practiced all the time. And he would complain that his students didn't understand the message of the Wu Wei Tao, and they would just like chill out on their couches thinking everything is too much effort. There's a natural ease way to go into essence and practice and so on, and realization of your nature. Same thing with my Dzogchen friends, right? As most of you know, I practice Dzogchen as well, and I'm a huge fan. I love it, and I love my lineage in Dzogchen. And I see the same thing. I see Dzogchen teachers running around the world telling people, this is the easeful path, the natural path. Don't do too much strenuous work. Even our Hatha Yoga Pratipaka says that. Don't do strenuous yoga. Don't hurt your body. Don't have pain. I agree. No need for pain, and no need for strenuousness. Now, here's the key. Strenuousness is very much when you battle against your own aptitude and your own desire for liberation. If you're shooting too high in the stages, you're going to have strenuousness in your practice, and that's not good, right? So all the different traditions, the Dzogchen, the Wu Wei Tao, the Zhengyi Tao, Orthodox Tao, the Kashmir Shaivism, etc., that make up the Mahasiddha tradition, yes, all of them come together to make up our tradition. They all say don't be strenuous, and I agree. But also, they all say don't get in the God realm of the human realm, okay? And unfortunately, many people teach that stuff today, but they don't know what they're talking about. They don't really know how it applies, and it's really quite laughable to see that they're really stuck in one of these realms and don't even see it, but they're teaching about it. So that's why I got to tell you, a proper apprenticeship, a proper amount of training underneath a mentor, acharya, who can actually tell you, yes, you've got this level, go to the next. No, you need to fix up this and this. How could we go without that? If I want to learn to change a tire, I've got to have a teacher for it. But don't talk about the teacher nowadays. Oh, it's a bad thing. Teachers are bad. Somehow a pool of unenlightened, unrealized, ignorant people are supposed to lead you to realization. Go figure. Very strange. Okay, so that highest aptitude, that highest thing pointed to by our Mahasiddha view, that we are already the universe, is great, and we have to hold that all the time. So here's the key. Hold the absolute view, work in the relative. Take that to the bank. I want you to hold that absolute view. You have to hold the absolute view that you're Shiva, you're Rigpa, you're nature of mind, you're the Buddha, you're the Tao. You got to hold that. You have to. And you have to stay connected to that through your awareness as much as possible, all day long, all night long, in fact. Through any circumstances, pleasurable, discomfort, painful, scary, terrorist attack, whatever, or neutral, you have to maintain in all those three different circumstances, okay? Now, but we have to work on the practical level of body, speech, and mind all the time. Suki, my wife, asked me, I think, Suki, was it you asked me the other day, do you still have to work on the level of the mind? Do you still have to maintain your mind in training? It was either you or Padma. And I said, yeah, of course, I have to do mind training. I still have to do mind training. Why? Well, didn't you have all these great realizations? Yeah, so what? Didn't you have all these great awakenings? Yeah, so what? LCD, right? Your mind, until it's completely merged in rainbow light, will always be functioning in this relative world. So you work it in a relative way. My gurus used to do mantra. When I was bodyguarding Swamiji, I heard him muttering mantra. Nobody was around, just sitting there. He'd be doing mantra. I hear him chanting shlokas from Ramayana. His Holiness, Tipanima, my great Dzogchen master, he was constantly training his mind, the basic training. He was chanting, doing a massive text of chanting every day, doing his mala. We'd walk around and I'd hear him muttering a bit, or he'd be in integration meditation. So the idea that you don't have to train like this when you get a little bit more advanced and so forth, that's crazy. It's really crazy. And I want to tell you, it's very much a characteristic of the Indian systems of training. And this is what bothers me. It's modern Indian, because I don't think in ancient India people would have done this. By only going from text lately, a lot of people developed the idea that you move from, like a lump of coal to metal to silver to gold, and you never fall back. Well, nothing works like that, especially in spiritual practice and sadhana. So if you want to increase your lowest common denominator, one of the most important things to do is attend to the basics over and over and over. And the traditions that come out of India don't do that. That's a bummer. They really should. They should. The people I know that are highly realized, they've done it. They review their basics and go over and over and over. It's very big in Tibetan teaching systems. And in Taoism, it's very important because basic is advanced, basically. So what do we need to do to progressively increase our lowest common denominator? We need proper view. No human realm, no God realm. So number one, the foundation is proper view. Otherwise, right away, we're off skew. And the proper view we're talking about here in the Mahasiddha tradition is a view of the types of traditions that include light body as the final result, as the highest fruit of the practice. There are people now from the Shaivist camps, Vedantist camps that say, oh, the light body is not the highest. Well, we think it is. Because obviously, if you are the universe physically, you've done something that nobody else did with their mental realization, right? And you've demonstrated a lowest common denominator that is demonstrable, that you have unified yourself with essence itself and radiated the five lights, five elements as your own being, instead of a limited karmic structure. Now that is the highest attainment, period, to any kind of logical thinking person, I think, obviously, why I'm in this tradition. So proper view, no human realm, no God realm, the view that comes from light body tradition, which is our tradition. And you need a full scope practice of body, speech, and mind, like I said. You need a teacher, next qualification, you need a teacher that is skilled in practice and view. This is very important, like I said. Make sure you check that the teacher's actually done the practices that they say they've done, right? I'm seeing it all the time. People are fabricating history to make it look like they've done a lot of work spiritually. And if you look back, you're like, how could you have done that for 20 or 30 years? You were in high school. You were in college. We knew you then. You were drinking beer with us and, that kind of thing. So you got to be really careful, I think. So teacher skilled in practice and view, extremely important. And check them out as best you can, right? Cycles of fundamentals. The next thing is probably the most important crux of this entire talk. Cycle through your fundamentals over and over and over and over and over. Drag yourself out of bed and do your physical practice that day. Do the prayers again that you know so well already. Oh, I did that already. I know it so well. Do it again. Dien Khyentse Rinpoche, the Dzogchen master of the Dalai Lama, performed the Om Mani Padme Hum Hri mantra, the most basic mantra of the whole Nyingma tradition. It's not even Dzogchen, it's Tantra. He performed that right up until he died. And people were saying to him, wow, what are you doing, Rinpoche? You're this high Dzogchen master, what are you doing? He basically just is in the habit of conditioning the mind all the time. That's what we have to get into. It's basically like hygiene. If you're not conditioning your mind towards the Dharma at all times, it will recondition itself, taking in the cues from all around you and your own past experiences and present moment fears or whatever, and it will recondition it towards the anti-Dharma. So you must recondition it because it's a live thing. It's a process, a functional process, and it's always growing, changing, so we have to really get into it and give it that constant nourishment. So cycle through your fundamental practices over and over again. I meet people say, well, I've done your Shakshai Foundation practice. I'm like, great. How many times? Oh, I think I've got my 100,000. I go, great. Go again. Why not? Go again. It's not unusual for people to do this. That's very important to build lowest common denominator, because if we're talking about foundation, isn't it obvious that the whole foundation levels of your training have to be done over and over? So Sukali and I developed the foundation to preliminary training and the foundation training. Preliminary level, foundation level, before you move into one of the 6 paths, right? And that's coming up on the website that we're launching. The website's pretty much developed, and now we're going to finish the filming, then it'll go up. And those levels are extremely important to review, right? They're online because we want people to have more access to the live teachings, to fly all the way here to Costa Rica. We want them to be able to do a lot of preliminaries and foundation online. It's great when you do it in person, of course. And we will have retreats in the future that are like 2 or 3 weeks long in the summer once we get more student body who want that, where the first week will be foundation preliminary, second week will be intermediate, third week will be advanced, like we used to do a long time ago in summers. So we'll do that again. But right now, cycle through as many times as you can, whatever you know is preliminary practices, and you have Shakshai Foundation practice on the Facebook group accessible right now. You can start working that right away. So then, let's see. Now I want to make a point that this can all be done. You can develop a very high lowest common denominator without being a hermit in retreat. We've gotten a bit of a feedback that I've been emphasizing being a hermit, going into retreat all the time, because that's how I lived in Thailand and here for so long, but here in Costa Rica. But this is not important. In fact, when I was going through my deepest work, transitioning stage 4, 5, 6, 7 in the 12-stage view, I was actually maintaining a chiropractic practice with many other practitioners in there. I was teaching martial arts 6 days a week. I was doing all my practice, and I was getting between 3 and 5 practice sessions a day. It does mean I didn't have friends. It does mean I didn't go to social things. My wife went to them and I didn't go, but that was my priority. So it doesn't mean I couldn't have a life. I worked, I hung out, I taught, I did my hobby. So if I didn't have a hobby like Kung Fu and teaching Kung Fu, martial arts, Stab and so on, then maybe I would have gone to parties. I could have stayed in awareness the whole time, right? So it's definitely not essential that to really get your lowest common denominator higher at the beginner and intermediate level to go off in the jungle, go off in the mountains, in the glacier. In fact, it might be a bit counterproductive because people that do that too early are fighting against what's natural and could be like going on a spiritual holiday, fantasy, And then they get back in the world and the first time it hits, boom, it drops. I'll give you an example, right from my example, right? Embarrassing. I did a 1.5 year retreat. I felt I went very deep in so many different ways and touched so many different places and completed so many cycles of practices. I was all set, all ready to go into advanced practice. And this whole 1.5 year retreat, I went home to see my brother who was dying of HIV. And within a half hour, 20 minutes of being in the car, my mother and my brother picked me up at the airport. I hadn't been home for, that would be now like 3 years or so. And I went back and I picked him up in the car from the airport. And my brother and I got into such a heated fight so quickly, because we used to fight like crazy, that it almost started getting like physical in the back seat. My mother pulled over and started crying. And I said, wow, here we are again. Total samsara, just finished this huge retreat. And boom, all of a sudden, the whole family's at it again. She's screaming, he's screaming, I'm screaming. I woke up in that moment and went, oh my God, there wasn't really that level of unbroken saturation of the awareness, no matter how high I reached in those other stages in that retreat. So it took me another, I would say another 5, 6 years to stabilize the insights I had in that retreat by cycling back through foundation practices and going again and again. So you get your test, your mother-in-law, whatever it is, you get your test. So you don't need to live like a hermit, okay? It's important that you don't. You need those regular tests. And then you need powerful integration practice. That is coming in the form of a few things. One thing is clear self-reflection. Do you have this ability for clear self-reflection? Astrology is good for this. You get a tantric astrology session, you look at those things, they tell you, you say, what are the things that are going to come up for me that I don't see? The astrologer tells you, and you review them every day because you don't see them. You have to remind yourself, yeah, I don't remember, right. I have this ego structure about wanting to be spiritual, right, I got to remember that. It's kind of narcissism, right, whatever it is. And you got to review these things. Or, oh, I tend to draw back from people. Or, oh, I judge people. That's a great way to keep checking, to stay with integration all day long. In our system, if you do Trika Method, you'll see Karma Dharma Sutra in there. That's in there, right, honey? And that's a great way to keep reviewing what you're working on by reading your Karma Dharma Sutra every day. So check in with your family too. Get feedback from close friends, from family, from your partner. Of course, in the way of the mirror consort, there's nothing better. I mean, your living guru at this point, your consort is with you and really becomes the focus of your guru yoga. and they can give you that feedback, and they're with you all the time. So it's a burn, baby, burn situation. You're always just burning, burning, burning. So that's a really good way to get feedback there too, to have clear self-reflection. And the other one is, how am I creating self-images? This always has to be examined, always has to be broken down. And if you don't leave enough time for it, you're just running, 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 and you're not leaving time to really contemplate into that for 30 minutes at a time or more. You're not going to get down to seeing these self-images. What are the self-images I'm creating that are not true about myself, that are boastful? How am I trying to get people to perceive me in a certain way, and so on? Because we have to break those down. If we're going to have a lowest common denominator keep raising, false self-images are constantly going to be lowering that level, constantly, as is basically lack of self-reflection. You know? So the traditional teacher role, when a person entered like stage 5 practice, which is quite high and upward, was or is still to show you those places where you're getting caught. And of course, your friends and family and cooler mates can do that for you. That's great if you have that agreement. But no one does it as great as your teacher, really, is what I find. So at some point in the practice, in the path, that becomes necessary to point stuff out. Or you're like Swami Shivananda of Rishikesh, who didn't need that. He was so pure. He was so self-effacing. Pure means self-effacing, able to see clear self-reflection, honestly look at it, let it go, had no big ego. This is a guy who was on the postage stamp in India as like a guru. That's like, you know, a big thing. He was severely a great saint, great tantric master, though he didn't teach tantra publicly. He was a great tantric master. And the great thing is he was up in the mountains, didn't want to be a teacher. Eventually, all of those great yogin hermits up there grabbed him, you know, and had a little talk, a little sit down with him and said, hey, you have to teach. It's your dharma. Get out of here, this mountain cave situation, and go teach. You need to give this to the world. And those are the kind of people that you really want to be with, the ones who get pushed into teaching, not the ones who want to be teachers. Right? So that's the traditional role there. Now, so here we go. That's to summarize. This was a class on lowest common denominator, which is assessing our base level of attainment. We usually, in summarizing it, we see it when we get surprised or when we have a super stress hit us, a hyper stress situation, and we lose our mind, we panic, we get identified with emotion, we make actions or activities or conduct that kind of isn't as clear or dharmic or compassionate as it could be, you know, whatever. This is how we find our lowest common denominator. We talked about many ways to assess it and to stabilize it. So no matter what practices you're doing, no matter what stage you're in our 12-stage view, from ignorance to enlightenment in the Trikamasa Yoga, there's a point where you have to, in each stage, you've got to keep, not a point, you must constantly be assessing what is my lowest common denominator without undermining your confidence in your path. Like, some people assess so much constantly. They'll be like, you think I'm okay? You think I'm okay? I don't know if I'm all right. Let me check the qualities of stage 3, 4. I don't know. You know, that isn't good. That's anxiety. That's not resting in your natural awareness. That's not trusting the view that you are essence already and that the teacher and your practices are bringing that out into full fruition, full expression. That's not good. You don't want to have that kind of thing. You don't want to go to a teacher or a mentor or a fellow cooler mate or something. How do you think I'm doing? What is my level? From that motive, okay? If you come like very self-assured, self-confident, your own self-authority, and you go to somebody and say, hey, Jim, you know, give me some feedback on what you see from me lately as we're interacting with the world and stuff. I really want to hear it. I'm working my Tarka, my self-assessment, I'm working on everything, but if you see some things where I might be sticking, let me know. I might not agree with them, but I want to hear what you have to say. This is a empowered way to go about this, which is good and will result in really good development. This is part 1 of lowest common denominator. In the future, we'll have other talks that will help you understand how to attain the lowest common denominator, assess it, raise it, etc., and the importance of it. Hi, everybody. I want to talk to you today assessing real attainment part 2. This aspect of real attainment is very important. It's based on our view. Our view is that we are arising from, immersed within, encompassed by an unlimited base reality, we can call it. The base. I tend to call it the base, as many other traditions do. You can call it Shiva, you We call it nature of mind, essence, source, whatever you want to call it. But we want to understand that our view is that we are immersed in this experience and that we arise from this experience. And some people call this experience God or love and so on. But we have a very specific understanding of this experience. This experience is pure spaciousness, meaning an unbounded wholeness, that there's no boundaries whatsoever on this experience. There's no limits to this universe I'm talking about. In fact, all of the universes we know of now are within this, arising from it, are part of it, and will resolve back into this space once again. But again, this space has no limitations. No limitation of space, no limitation of time. So when I say space, I mean a capacity of spacious hosting, not a literal space, which is also defined by borders, right? But if you let your mind go, which is one of the higher meditations in our system, and let it try to get out to the ends of this space in all directions, this is actually really good for us because there is no end to it. And when your mind realizes its nature, it also goes out without end as well. And this is one of the ways that we recognize ourselves as the space. So this parashiva, this base experience, is who and what we are at our core, at our essence. Simultaneously, the whole manifested universe, or universes, and all the variation, glory, terribleness, evil, whatever, all come from this same base. Samsara and nirvana, good and bad, all comes from this same base, right? Okay, so in assessing real attainment, one of the most important things we need to do is to understand that we are not trying as an ultimate goal, as what enlightenment really is, we're not trying to get into a state of consciousness, okay? This is super important. We are not trying to get into any state. A state can be gotten into by a drug, DMT, whatever, LSD, and I can have an open state. I can even have chakras stimulated by these states, by these drugs, sorry. And that can open me into this other kind of expanded consciousness. But that is a state that is not the base. That is a state supported by the base, like every other state. But it's not your enlightened base itself. It's not your enlightened nature. The ultimate goal of our practice is that we realize our enlightened nature, right? Okay, that's the ultimate absolute view. We are that nature. We are it right now. There's really nothing we have to do as far as making that nature. This is what the easeful path is trying to describe to you. There's nothing you need to do to make that nature. We need to recognize that nature. Why it's called self-recognition or self-realization, right? So, but to do that, we have the relative world to deal with, our karma, our samsara, a deep belief that we are not that. Basically, it's a deep belief that we're not that. And it doesn't just come from your mind. It doesn't just come from your conditioning of religion or education or social, family, etc. It's actually inborn. It's a fault, a defective mechanism, if you want to say, right at the moment that we come in as individual. We think we're individual. We see ourselves as individual. And therefore, we conduct ourselves in that way and further compound that experience of being individual by being conditioned, right? By seeing ourselves as separate, by taking a lot of selfies, by thinking, oh, woe is me, this happened to me, I'll do this, I accomplished it, right? Like the Bhagavad Gita tries to tell us, there's no doer, there's no real accomplisher. Same thing with Tao Te Ching. Things are just the way they are. This is the base expressing as you. And that happens, you're in a very good enlightened place, right? But until then, we have this relative conditioning we have to work with. So in our view, we want to understand that we have two experiences that we're holding simultaneously. One is, yeah, we're the base. You know, all this that we are arises from here. And that from that arises and manifests everything, including our relative psychological yogic self. That yogic psychological self is going through a process. It could be a delusory process. There could be really no time in the universe, et cetera, from the absolute view. But from the relative view, from where we are, we're hurting. We need healing. We need to go through a process of yogic realization step by step. That's because we still have this deep understanding, a deep belief that we're separate from pure essence base, okay? That won't go away with thinking about it. This is the faulty view of a lot of modern, scholarly, text-based approaches, right? And even some of the practitioner approaches where the view and the discrimination between what is real enlightenment and what is a state of consciousness is not very highly developed, okay? Our understanding of what is the base, what is enlightenment, and what is a consciousness state, an overlay on that could appear to be enlightenment, is not enlightenment. We have a very clear understanding about that, and I want to communicate that to you a little bit today. Not a long class, very short. What is real attainment? Real attainment is getting into the base. What is it relatively until I'm in the base? Practicing from a place of lucidity, where I know that I'm the spaciousness of the base that I described earlier, and also the clarity, the luminosity of that base, the knowledge, the clarity, the luminosity, the energy. So we said there was just two parts of the base, and first I only described the spaciousness, and now I want to talk about this other aspect. Co-equal to it, arising with it, but dependent upon that hosting space, okay, is this sense of pure clarity and luminosity, light that just fills that whole space, right? It's not a light like a General Electric light bulb light, right? Here the light we're talking about is a type of self-awareness, that is luminous and radiant. So the space is not a dead, inert, like outer space where spaceships and rocket ships fly through it, right? This space that is the great hosting space that we are is conscious, is self-aware, is luminous, and it illuminates itself by its own self, okay? In the Mahabharata, there's one of my favorite lines. It says, consciousness via consciousness recognizes itself as consciousness. And that's beautiful, really beautiful. Pure Shaivism there, love the stuff. Mahabharata is often overlooked as a great spiritual text. You know, it's not just about dharmic obligations and how to be in the world and the difficulty of being good. It's much more than that. Okay, so we have this base. It's pure spaciousness, unbounded. It's pure clarity, luminosity, self-recognition happening within it, unbounded. That self-recognition experience is in the base all the time, always intact, and is never, ever cut, broken, or left behind. It's who you are, right? It's who I am. It's who we all are. Everyone has this experience in their potentiality, okay? Now, what we want to do to have real attainment and to assess our real attainment in a nutshell is to know, are we going towards that base in our progressive yogic path of the relative me becoming that base again, or recognizing that base which is already there, uncreated? Or am I going off on sidetracks? Or the worst yet, have I grabbed onto a concept thinking I'm already there? I'm in the enlightened state. This is what it is, okay? And really it's just a concept. So here, the big distinction we want to make in this short class today is to have a real assessment of our attainment, we must understand that ultimate fruition is not a state of consciousness. Ultimate fruition, ultimate enlightenment, ultimate realization, recognition of yourself as base, essence, and maintaining that all day through awareness, which naturally exudes from this essence state all the time. It's not awareness of something. It's actually awareness that you are abiding in this state without break. This is the enlightened state, right? I shouldn't say state, did I? This is the enlightened whatever experience, right? This is difficult with English or any language. So it's not a state. We're not in a state. In the human realm, if we get stuck in the human realm and read too many textbooks, we go to too many teachings that really have us try to understand too much about spirituality and not dive deeply into it, not practice with our teachers and go very deep into it, go into this expansive spaciousness, into this luminosity. And if we don't really have searing self-reflection in those miniature states of expansion, luminosity, which look like the base but aren't the base yet, which we get in meditation, we're going to reflexively think that's me. That comes from, again, not whittling away attachment to a self. The self-identity reifies. I am the meditator. I have this state. I have this consciousness. Now I'm going to go on the internet and tell everybody about my experience of awakening. Now I'm going to write books about my experience of awakening. No, this is a state. And I see this fault a lot with the academics, okay? Academics fall for this a lot because there's not a lot of academics out there teaching who went through real guru-disciple apprenticeship, and because of that, it wasn't pointed out to them in detail, these minor subtleties, right? Not all, of course. So some people academically trained who are fantastically realized, who've done fantastic spiritual work, but they've done real work, you know? But this is the fault of any of us that get fixated in the human realm. We all have a brain, we all have a mind, so it's very easy for us to get fixated in the human realm when we have experiences. Tibetans call nyams, spiritual experiences, right? These are useless in a lot of ways. And what happens is we have these states of consciousness that we get into, which are altered, just like a drug trip. You do meditation and you're so deep, next thing you know, you come out and you go, dude, I'm the base, you know? But even if you had the base for a second there, which is quite possible, a millisecond in your meditation, by the time you think about it, it's no longer the base. By the time you apply it to yourself, it's samsara, looking like enlightenment, looking like the base. This is the human realm difficulty. We're born in the human realm. You know, I can't fault just the scholars. We're all born here. And this is our default mechanism. And this is why it's so important to have very good view and very good teachings and a good teacher. Really study your view, study your view, study your view. Your view really should be your guru. The view really should be your guru. And then because we grow in the relative sense like this with our awareness of ourself and our states, and you know, we need some kind of mentoring at some point. Usually around stage 5, it becomes obvious to us that we really need some mentoring to get to stage 12, right? Or stage 7, irreversible enlightenment at stage 7. Because the mind is tricky, because it's very hard to see ourselves and so on. But this is all founded, you can have the greatest teacher in the world, but it's all founded upon you understanding your view. You must study your view. So nobody can sell you swampland in Jersey, you know? When it comes to spirituality today, everybody's selling swampland in Jersey, selling you states of consciousness. I don't want a state. I don't want a state. So a drug trip can give you a state. A chakra functioning for a few moments or minutes or weeks or months, whatever, will give you a state of consciousness. It will give you an altered state, an expanded experience. It is not enlightenment. It is not full realization. This is what we really have to get. It's actually much more ordinary than that. It's not so trippy as everybody thinks it is, right? So expanded states can come from chakra. Expanded states can come from meditation. Expanded states can come from drugs. Expanded states can hit us all the time just out of the blue. But how do we know it's the base or not the base? And that's what we spend all of our time studying view, listening to lectures, meditating deeper. And here's especially the important thing, I believe, for the relative us who's not enlightened yet, even though we are at the base, we don't know it yet, so therefore it's not useful to us. We have to go through this progressive and steady stage by stage process until we don't need that process anymore. You know, let's say in our meditation pathway of meditation, we have 40 stages. There's about 40 miniature stages that you go through. Well, let's say you have full realization at stage 20. That's it. You don't need any more. You went from 20 to 40. You didn't jump over. You didn't spiritually bypass. You recognized your nature in a sustainable, constant way. And you don't need the rest of the work, basically. And then what you do is you spend the rest of your time stabilizing this experience of the base and enhancing it. Because here's another fault, which shows a concept of a state of enlightenment instead of real enlightenment, is that a lot of people think I'm there, then I don't have to do anything anymore. And that already is an idea, right? I don't have to do anything anymore, I'm there. There's no there. You've always been there. You've always been Shiva, but you've always had to do something. So when you reach a state of irreversible enlightenment, it doesn't mean you don't do any practice. In fact, I was reading an advanced text the other day, which is kind of interesting, saying that's actually when you're doing the most practice. You're doing the most practice when you're after you're irreversibly realized, because now you're in the view all the time of yourself as Shiva or the base, and you're always expanding. You're always meditating. It becomes no longer just seated formal. But oddly enough, and this is what the text said, which I thought was great, it's the people that are realized who sit for most meditation practice. It's the people who are unrealized who do the least sitting for meditation practice. And I find that very true and very interesting, right? So human realm concept, I don't need it so much. I'm so much there. I'll do a 20-minute meditation once in a while, you know. My masters, meditating all day. Informally, always integrated with the state of essence through awareness. Formally as well, doing formal seated practices. And here's what's interesting too. Not just sitting in open non-conceptual meditation, Not just working with rainbow light and all the other things that we get up in stage 9, 10, 11, and 12. The last 4 stages of our 12-stage view are all about light, right? We have self, then we have time, then we have light. Okay, not just those practices. Of course, they did those practices too. But what else did they do? Basic mantra, basic pujas, reciting prayers and chanting, praying for other people's benefit, you know, all this kind of basic stuff too, making offerings. But it was very interesting. Okay, so this is just a brief class on assessing real attainment, and this one is about not getting caught in states. I mentioned human realm, there's also God realm. All the 6 realms are basically ways that we can fixate in states of consciousness rather than enlightenment. It's not actually accurate to call the 6 realms tantric psychology. That's highly inaccurate. The 6 realms teaching is a 3-level teaching on how our consciousness fixates in states and how these states can look like enlightenment. Some of them, human realm ones and God realm ones, Titan realm ones. Pretty much, you know, when you're in the demon realm, you know you're not enlightened. When you're in the hell realm, ghost realm, animal realm, when you're checked out, you definitely know you're not enlightened. And other people will know it too. But when people meet spiritual teachers who are fixated in the Titan realm, the God realm, the human realm, because the person isn't realized themselves, there's no resonance where they can sense that that person is not realized. And that's where the problem comes in, because the person who's in those 3 fixation states, they may really sincerely believe that they have some state of realization, but not having received the beautiful teachings of 6 realms on a spiritual level, it's not psychology, they will not know that they're stuck there, right? Or they won't want to admit that they're stuck there. Either way, honesty is a big thing, right? Self-honesty is tough. So we can get stuck in the God realm too, and the God realm version of this looks very much like enlightenment, and this is tricky, especially from the Indian side of the mountains. In the past 900 years, there's been a feeding of this vision of enlightenment as completely blissed out, totally ecstatic, one with everything. You know, there's so many flaws in this kind of view, it's not funny. One of the main flaws is that as your base self-recognized experience, there is no bliss. I'll do another whole teaching on that another time. There is no bliss. The bliss comes when the base expresses up into this world. So if you're just experiencing yourself at the Shiva Tattva, it's not blissful, okay? That came all later. That was all added later, all that stuff. In Tibetan Tantra and Indian Tantra, it all came later. And we'll get into that another time. That's another state that you could be fixated on, bliss, ecstasy, right? Super clarity, you could be fixated on that as well. So the God realm has a lot of that kind of fixation involved as well, all right? So this is just to alert you to, again, that the base is who you are, what you are, that's the absolute view. But in the relative view, you're working towards that constantly all the time. And as you're working towards it, don't ever settle for a state of consciousness. I'll give you a great tip. When I went into my first retreat, and every retreat after that for the rest of my life, I found this little trick. I would sit in meditation, and once I was in a really deep state where I thought, you know, when you're in a retreat for 18 months, you get a lot of deep states. And when I was there, and many retreats subsequently, I was able to move into deep states. But once I would be in these states, I would recognize and say, is this all there is? So I would not ask that out loud because I was in a pre-verbal type of experience of consciousness. Very deep state. Wasn't enlightenment, but very deep state. And I would say to myself, in that pre-verbal state, I would like sort of pose the feeling of the question, right? Just the bhava of it. Like, really, is this all there is? You know, that kind of thing. Like, could this really be it? This can't be it. You know, it's sure, it's suffused with white light in every direction. Gold light showering down, nothing but a oneness experience, all compassion, all wisdom. But is this really it? You know? And I relax into that. There was a key relaxation moment. It's kind of not strenuous, but it takes effort to relax, and boom, the whole thing would clear. And I'd either come back to ordinary consciousness, or that would reveal itself into the next subtle layer, which was a little bit closer to self-recognition, essence base, but not really it yet. So when you're sitting for your practice and you're finding these states, make sure you're asking yourself, really, if you're a meditator, and you've done your basic training already, ask yourself, is this really it? Is this all there is? You know, pose that feeling space inside yourself and watch it clarify. And then behind that, the last tip on practice is there's a mechanism where we want to grasp everything that arises, even the most subtle state that looks like enlightenment. That's what we have to get under. That process of me sitting there and asking, is this really it? No matter what meditation I was doing, at the final result of the meditation practice, I would say, really? Like, really? Is this it? That led me to understanding that there's a mechanism in the ahankara that is always producing or pushing forward some kind of state for us to grasp. That's the dynamism. That's the mechanism you want to undermine. It's a mechanism. It's always going to be operating until you're relaxed in your base and you're aware of it through your awareness, which arises from the base, reflecting back on the base. Okay? Until that's your steady state, there's always going to be some kind of form of consciousness, even so subtle, put forward by your ahankara, by the sense of separateness, to maintain its sense of separateness, because it doesn't want to go, as we know. And you have to be aware of that mechanism, because then you can move from dissolving all the things that it's constantly showing you to cutting the legs off the mechanism, and just you can relax back in your true nature and begin to go deeper into the journey of self-realization. That's for very, very advanced meditators, right? Now, if you're not doing that kind of advanced meditation, you're still doing the preliminaries and you're doing the foundation work of our system and so forth, then at these stages in the beginning, it's still important not to grasp at states of consciousness. You're going to be producing states of consciousness. You're consciously, actively going to be producing them, and you should. You should. In the beginner intermediate stages before advanced stages where we're letting everything go, we're actually trying to reprogram into positive states, trying to reprogram ourselves and purify and so on. So there are small goals with attainable realizations that are, you could say, spiritually materialistic, that if you stay with the system, they'll be dissolved and let go. Well, why do that? Why not just go directly to it? Because we have too much conditioning to go directly to it. If we try to go directly to it, we end up deluded, thinking in a very subtle way that we are realized because Abhidharma Gupta said so in the textbook, because the great Buddha said so in the textbook, because the great Sufi master said so in the textbook, or because I was at a lecture and some teacher pointed at me and said, this is it. This is your true nature. Relax, you know, all that stuff. The mind will grab all that and will be conceptual. So in the beginning intermediate stages, preliminary, foundation, intermediate, you're going to be creating little states of consciousness along the way. They're useful. They're part of the path. But with the proper view, you won't grasp them. Okay? All right. So to have a real assessment of what real attainment is, we want to stay away from grasping at states if you're in preliminary, foundation, intermediate levels of practice. And if you're in advanced practice, again, you have to be really sharp and go deeper into the view, get some pointing out instructions from your main teacher, your acharya, sit together, right? And, see where you're grasping. See where you're grasping. See where the subtlety of it is there. It's amazing how it can show up in so many different ways, okay? Real attainment, not grasping at states.